how much is a baby supposed to sleep? Like, let's think of, in the first 6 weeks of life. Like, how much are they supposed to be sleeping? Is there a sort of a set rule, or how many hours?
Look, that's a really good question, because a lot of my families will message me saying, okay, I've been home from the hospital, let's get into the routine, right? And I was like, oof, you're putting a lot of pressure on yourself, right? Because if you have a baby that wakes up at 5:30 a.m. for a feed, chances are in the next 45 minutes to an hour and a half, they're going to go back to sleep, right? For the first 8 weeks, enjoy the newborn stage, right? And also focus on your body as well. Because if you were trying to get your baby in a routine of, waking up and putting them to sleep and waking up, it's exhausting, right? Your main goal is having them latch on if you're breastfeeding, having them take a bottle if they're on formula, for whatever reason. So you, as much as I say, stick to a routine if possible, very simple. Try a 6 a.m. feed, try a 10 a.m. feed, a 2 p.m. feed, a 6 a.m. feed. If you are hitting those milestones with feed, chances are in between that time, they are going to sleep. So I found that with my children, when you first come home from hospital, it's the best time because they're sleeping. So when your family wants to come over and you want to have them over, absolutely have them fold some laundry, have them make you a cup of tea, or encourage you to have a shower, right? Don't try to follow a schedule. If families want to hold the kids, let them hold the babies. Let them enjoy that time. I always say from 0 to 8 weeks, enjoy the time of having a newborn.
And then after that, one of the other things that I see parents worry about is having, following the natural rhythm of the baby when the baby wants to feed, as opposed to being sort of very, sort of regimented in when you feed. Like, are those two things in conflict?
That could be real controversial, right? Because I do have some parents, and again, it's moms that have, they read everything before they've given birth, and they get home, they're like, man, I've read everything, but what did I actually read? This is where they need the help. They need the confidence. But sometimes when you get on a schedule, if you know that you're going to be aiming at 6 o'clock and it's 5:30, and then you do a 6 o'clock feed, well, you know that, okay, I'm going to settle my baby back to sleep if they wake up an hour and a half later, right? Because it's too soon for a feed if they've had a full feed. So I think giving yourself a time to kind of aim for, then you kind of know if you are going to go through a period of, let's say, cluster feeding, because that is normal for a baby. You go through these stages of all you feel like you're doing is eating and feeding your baby and trying to get some sleep. They say sleep when the baby sleeps, almost nearly impossible, right? I mean, you're a mom of 4. How did you go with that? Did you just fall asleep when your baby slept?
No, sadly not.
So I always say, look, just be practical. Try to find a time where you're going between 2 and 4 hours. If you are feeding every 20 minutes, maybe your baby's not getting enough food. If you're finding that your baby is whinging all the time, maybe they're getting too much food, or maybe you have, the fun stages of reflux. So I love the fact that when something doesn't seem right, that's when parents reach out.
And so just to explain, what is cluster feeding?
Cluster feeding is when you feel like there's no end to the feed. You feed, they sleep for 20 minutes, they're back up again, they're feeding on both sides. And look, I get parents that will start saying to me, look, do you think that I should, do formula? Well, look, feeding is best, right? But if you are breastfeeding, you do go through the stage of a baby constantly feeling like that never ending of feeding.
And this might be a controversial question, but lots of people will say that they think that bottle-fed babies sleep better than breastfed babies. You've obviously nannied for lots of people at this stage. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I do get a lot of parents that will say to me, okay, do you think I should breastfeed or I should just go straight to formula? And, as a first-time parent, you do what you want to do. I'm going to be there to support you because a fed baby is a happy baby. But look, I've got some parents that I was a mom of 2. I couldn't make anything. I had to put my kids on formula, but how much easier would it be to be at a shopping center just to whip it out and, start rather than running to the cafe, getting some warm water, shaking the bottle. So look, no, I think if you're feeding your baby enough and you're making enough milk, you don't need to revert to formula.
Okay. And you don't particularly see any differences in sleep patterns between bottle fed and formula fed?
Look, there are some parents that swear by the fact that they'll do a 10 p.m. dream feed with formula. But then sometimes when I'm there at night, if I give them a 10 p.m. dream of formula, they're still up at 12. They're not going to 2 o'clock, right? So it's these habits that babies are waking up and you have to help them connect their sleep cycles and go back to sleep. So if your baby is a baby that sleeps for 20 minutes and you get your baby up after 20 minutes and you don't try to help them settle, they're not going to be able to connect sleep cycles. And you're going to be pulling out your hair because you're tired and you're limited between 20 and 40 minutes of having that baby sleep. And how else do you get anything else done? especially if you have 3 other kids at home. But there is a misconception behind any type of sleep training or sleep settling because everyone is so scared of the cried out, but it's not really about that. It's about being there with your child, whether you're picking them up and helping them settle or you're putting them back down. They are going to protest cry because that is their form of communication.
Okay.
Yeah.
So controlled crying, that was definitely a thing when my children were younger. What's your thoughts on that?
If your son or daughter asked for a lollipop at 6 o'clock in the morning or a Snickers bar, would you give it to them?
No.
And what are they going to do when you tell them no?
Cry?
Yeah, they're going to cry, right? I mean, not that I want to compare a piece of chocolate, for a baby not settling, but I guess, I say to parents all the time, well, would you give your 1-year-old a lollipop? They were like, no. And I'm like, well, let's start getting in some really good habits for your child, right? Because when you go through that 4-month regression, if your child has had no form of sleep training or, sleep techniques, they're not going to learn how to connect those sleep cycles. And you are going to have a child that has regression for weeks, right? And as we all know, the 4-month one is the worst one because they're reaching new milestones, but milestones does mean regressions. So I always say to parents, if you have a baby that's going to cry, don't leave them there for 5 minutes. Give them a minute or two, let them try to settle, go to there and help them through it, whether that's picking them up, giving them some pats and putting them back down. But I've got some parents that will say to me, oh, Anna, you've never seen a baby like this before. And I get to the house, right? And I'm like super excited because I am so motivated when people say to me, this is game on. I'm like, bring it. Like sleep maker's here, right? Like I am so ready for this. And then I'll say, okay, how long do you try to let her settle for? Oh, I don't. As soon as she hears her stirring, she picks her up. So of course, when she does start crying, even when the mom is holding her, they're just so flustered and they're not sure what to do. So controlled crying, you're not leaving your newborn baby there for 5 minutes and saying, see you in 5 minutes. It's about, giving 30 seconds to 2 minutes, helping them pat through it. If they still aren't settling, pick them up, put them back down. It's a lot of work, especially because you want the cry to go away so quickly because it escalates. And when it escalates, you instantly think something is wrong with your child, right? So it's human nature. We don't want our baby to cry. But at the same time, I say to parents, let them have a protest cry. Let them start so then you can start these methods, whether it's picking up or putting down or standing over their bassinet and just giving them pats, letting them know that you are there.
And so tell us what happens at 4 months with the baby.
Look, it's one of those things like your baby starts rolling, right? Most of the time they're out of swaddles by then. They know the difference between night and day. It's a time where you don't have to feed all night long, but parents are still a bit wary about that because they're like, well, they're not on solids yet. Absolutely. But that is where you want to do all the methods that you've learned to be able to do a 10 o'clock dream feed and then not another feed till 6 a.m. So sometimes the regression can last a week and sometimes it can last 4 weeks. If you are somebody that's unsure and you keep trying 10 different methods in the middle of the night, it's going to last longer because it's really, really confusing to the baby. But I always say if you put the work in straight away, it's going to be hard. You'll find that over time, it just gets easier. And I don't want to say it disappears quickly because that is a bit of a myth, but I think you just get the confidence to be like, right, my baby's going to start being unsettled. I know what to do now when they start rolling. I've had parents say like, she's rolling, I have to go get one of those angel mats in case she stops breathing. I'm like, no, if she's rolled on her tummy, that's okay. You can't keep rolling her back, or it's like the baby that drops the dummy every 3 minutes and you're running back and forth trying to get the dummy to stay in their mouth. Like it's hard work. It's exhausting. So I think a lot of parents have that breaking point at 4 months, because if I were to look at my marketing of where we spend most of our money, it's always at the 4-month sleep regression. That is our majority of bookings.
Wow. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. You just reminded me, our first 3 children all did have a dummy. And my husband decided with our 4th child that he was sick of getting up at night to put dummies back into people's mouths. So he gave our youngest child his thumb. And that was even...
Wow. How long did that last for?
That was, I think he sucked his thumb till he was about 7. So
Not your husband's thumb.
No, as in, as in his own thumb. Yeah. But yeah, so that was a mistake. So do you have any specific ideas on using a dummy or a pacifier or?
I love them. I know like a lot of sleep consultants don't like them because they kind of are probably a bit time consuming. But I think about a child who is very colicky or who does suffer from reflux, because that is a lot of my bookings as well, right? And if they're sucking, and it's help bringing down the pain, I'm all for it. Because if you're getting an hour and a half of sleep and you have to go change that dummy like pop it in, that's okay. But if you get to the point where the dummy is dropping out every 2 to 3 minutes, encourage every other time to put that dummy in. Because what it teaches the baby is to suck harder and to hold on to it longer. Because as soon as that dummy drops, if you're putting it in every single time you enter the room every 2 minutes, they just spit it out. So I had one lady say, well, how can a baby do it? Like, look, they're really, really smart. We do not give babies enough credit. So anyway, she was a bit concerned and didn't really believe me. And then I remember getting a message, oh my God, it works. So every other time she went in there, she'd offer the dummy. The next time she'd go in there, she wouldn't offer it. So it was every other time. Then finally, they eventually sucked on it a bit longer. And then but then again, you reach a point where between 3 and 6 months, they just can't keep it in and they can't put it in. Right. So some parents will say, okay, when you sleep train, let's get rid of the dummy. Some kids will have them till they're 3. They're not going to go to kindergarten with the dummy. So everyone, each to their own, right?
So Anna, lots of our listeners live all around the world. So not all of them are going to be able to have you come to their house. So let's think about this family who have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old and mum's sleeping with one and dad's sleeping with the other one, and their relationship's kind of going down the toilet, and they're also exhausted, and the kids are exhausted because they're not getting enough sleep.
Yep.
Can you give me a couple of pointers that our listeners could do even if they never actually get to meet you?
Both parties have to be on board, right? Mom and dad have to be there. And I'm very honest. I'm like, you're going to fight. It's completely normal. And it's their, these two people are like, okay, they're ready for it. What's going to get worse? The dad's like, I'm ready for anything. And they sit there and you ask them questions. And at first it's kind of, rainbows and butterflies. Oh yeah, we've tried that. I'm like, what about this? What about that? No. And then it's all of a sudden like, well, no, you did that yesterday. No, I saw you do this, right? That's what I want. I want that honesty because we can't meet in the middle until both parties can agree that something has to change. So it's about open communication. It's about, once you decide to do this, you can't stop. So if you're the stronger parent, you're going to be the one that are going to be starting to set the boundaries for those children. Because if you fall apart after 5 minutes, chances are you and your husband are going to start fighting. One's going to leave the house and one's going to be crying on the couch.
So if you have a 3-year-old who you're having to lie beside every night, would your advice be that you lie with them for 5 minutes and then you remove yourself from the room?
I am all about ripping the Band-Aid off.
Okay.
Right? So I do find that if you've been laying with them for 45 minutes and then you're saying to me, Anna, do you think I should lay with them for 5 minutes? No, because that's confusing. And they are going to pull on your heartstrings. And the chances of you leaving in 5 minutes, I could place a bet that that's not going to happen. Right? So I say to parents, let's start something new. It's all about, so if I get a child who's 3 over, they know that something's going to change. They'll be like, look, Anna from Sleep Maker's coming out. And the first day, they're really excited for a change, right? They can't wait for me to arrive. And then I get there and they like me up until bedtime because I've started these new rules and these new boundaries. It's not about being mean. I actually want the child to like me, but because, you're telling them to do something that they're not going to like, it does take them a while to trust you. And so I say to the parents, whether you're doing it or I'm doing it, maybe read stories on the couch. Don't do things in the bedroom because as soon as it's time to leave, like I said, they'll pull on your heartstrings and then you'll feel emotional about it and you won't want to leave. They start crying. So I had a family with twins and I would say to them, read them books on the couch. Don't make the room purely that when you go in there, it's going to be a really quick handover. Okay, remember I said at bedtime, we're going to read books on the couch. We're going to walk into the bedroom. I'm going to give you a hug and a kiss. I'm going to tuck you in and I'll see you in the morning. And then you leave the room, right? And you can say to them, I'll be back. I'm just going to go do the laundry and come back. I always say to parents, don't say I'm going to come back in 2 minutes. Because if you have a 7-year-old that's going to be sitting looking at that time, they're just waiting for that time. So let them know that you're in the room. Okay, I'm just going to step outside. I'm going to go put the laundry in the dryer and I'll be back. Or I'm going to go empty the dishwasher and I'll be back. Make noise, right? Let the child know that you are out. Don't sneak around. Don't, eventually I say to close the door. But for the time being, the biggest thing you can do is leave that room. But go back and check on them, just like we do as babies. This is the misconception behind controlled crying is even though we leave the room and they're in there for 30 seconds to a minute by themselves, we're still going back. We're still letting them know, wow, you've done really, really well. And I think a lot of parents who have older children want a result that day, but it takes practice. It's like, I said to this mom, I remember I went on this juicing diet, right? And the first day is the hardest. The second day is even worse because you know that you're going to wake up and be on juice. But then the third day, you're like, oh, my body has just adjusted. Same with kids. The first day, they're a bit unsure. You kind of get through it. The second day, you're like, oh my God, this is so hard. And you want to stop and revert back to your ways. But then you get to day 3, you're like, wow, I've seen a change, keep going. Not that I want to compare to juice, but you know what I mean?
That's great.
It's like a fab diet, but it's just, you got it. So when I say rip the Band-Aid off, if you know, the chances of you going into that room, reading a book, you're down on their level, they'll be like, Mommy, please don't leave 5 more minutes. And you're like, okay. But you know what? Okay, Tommy, time to go to bed. I'm going to come back and check on you. Okay. That's the best thing. And you know what? You might be in and out of that room 60 times. I would prefer you in and out of that room 60 times than you laying with him until he falls asleep. And if little Tommy decides to go for a run, well, you put your joggers on because you're going to run and get him and you're going to bring him back to bed. Okay, let's try this again, right? So that is my statement of ripping the Band-Aid off.
I love that. So, okay, so Tommy has finally fallen asleep.
Yep.
And it's now 2 a.m. and you feel the little tap.
Yep.
Or you just feel little Tommy climbing over you and climbing into the bed. What do we do then? Do we say, oh, well, he did well to get to 2. We'll decide him get into bed with us? Or are you just saying,
or sometimes you don't even know little Tommy's gotten into bed because they're so quiet, right? Look, that is a time where if you do notice that he is awake and in your bed, oh, good job on sleeping in your bed. Less talking is best. You don't want to have a full-blown conversation because they get hungry, they need water, they want their iPad, they want to watch TV, right? Pick them up, bring them back to their bed, put them in it. I'll be right back to check on you. And you do the same thing. And you might do that 60 times. It might take you an hour and a half. That is the hard work that I'm talking about. And that is where people crack. So when clients say to me, oh my gosh, look, I'll just do it myself. I'm all about them trying. I will give you I'll give you support where I can, but you have to be ready for it. And that's where it goes with parents. You want to be on the same page because if dad is doing it and mom isn't, and she's a bit of a weak link, you're not going to get anywhere. So it's so important to be on the same page and work as a team because you want that child to know whether they go to mom or they go to dad, they're going to have the same outcome. The results are going to be the same. Well, dad lets me get away with this. And I love it when the dads will be like, oh yeah, well, I work all day, so I feel really, really bad, which absolutely you are going to feel that way. But then when they're on the same page and the kids are like looking around like, what's going on here? You're going to have quicker results.
Yeah, they're looking for the weakest link.
Yeah, but you know what? Don't kid yourself because I always say this to families. I go there, I do the first 3 nights, right? It's getting rid of bottles, it's getting rid of dummies, it's teaching an older child to stay in your bed. But you still have this 2-week window that you have to do all of the hard work as well. So don't kid yourself. You're still going to be on this emotional roller coaster because what happens if you change one little thing, they are going to find a loophole to be better and to get out of that room, right? So like I had a dad, he's so beautiful. He rang me up because he wasn't sleeping. He was having issues at work. And so he thought after the 2 weeks, the little boy was doing great, that then he could start sitting in bed with him. So then I had to go back out to remind him and to show him, okay, you give him a little inch, he's going to take the lot, right? And so he realized really quickly, oh, I can't do that anymore. But he also didn't have the confidence to tell him. So I had to go back and be like, okay, dad's going to leave the room. You're going to go to sleep on your own. So when he is sleeping, don't change anything. Don't change anything. You've got this 2-week window with Sleep Beggar that if you do book in it and something happens, reach out to us. Don't try to get online and solve it. Like we've done that for you. That's what you're paying for.
Yeah.
We're giving you advice that we have done for years rather than you trialing and erroring because, when you called us today, you wanted these issues fixed last week. And that's the majority of clients that call.
One thing that I hear repeatedly from all my new patients is that often their past experiences with appointments to address their symptoms of menopause have made them feel rushed, unheard, and frustrated. As a doctor of 25 years with first-hand experience and understanding the many symptoms that one woman may encounter in her menopause transition, I knew I couldn't do this subject justice in a 15-minute appointment. Which is why I've created the menopause appointments, designed to support you on your journey through the perimenopause and postmenopause. This 60-minute session gives you and your doctor the ideal amount of time to understand your concerns, needs, and desires. It gives us time to do a comprehensive assessment, including a full review of your medical history, assessing your mood, your sleep, weight, and libido, and much more. Receive referrals for tests as needed, prescribe suitable medications if required, perform a skin analysis, and leave you with a comprehensive tailored plan unique to you. This is crafted to help smooth your transition through the perimenopause, postmenopause, and allow you to thrive, not just survive. If you or someone you know is experiencing perimenopause or continuing to have symptoms in the postmenopause, these appointments are for you. You can book an appointment with one of our doctors today. We have clinics located at Forster Speech and Newcastle, and you can book online at youbydrshaunawatts.com.au. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions or statements within it do not constitute medical, healthcare or other professional advice. Information is provided for educational and entertainment purposes only. If you have any health concerns, always consult your doctor.